So we have some big news to discuss today surrounding the future of our football club. We learn what Todd Boehly and Egbahli's grand vision for our club is, and on top of this too, we get the first interview from our co-sporting directors in Lawrence Stewart and Paul Winstanley. So it's nice that we finally have something meaty and juicy to sink our teeth into, and it's quite clear that I'm hungry as I'm recording. So my friends, hit that like button, share your thoughts and opinions. Before we continue on, today's video is brought to you by Parimatch. Quick question everyone, but how would you like to net yourself £30 in football free bets? That's right. Our friends over at Parimatch UK are offering their new customers £30 in football free bets when you place your first £10 with them on any football market. To claim this offer, you must simply create a Parimatch account and opt into the promotion. Then place a £10 bet on any football market of odds of even or above within 7 days of opening your new account. Full terms and conditions apply, with all the links you need provided below in the description. So thank you to Parimatch UK for sponsoring today's video. So let's start with things we discussed Boehly and Egbahli first, and today I gotta give credit to the Telegraph. A very insightful article was released today, and they really just painted the picture behind our new ownership's vision for our football club. Now, to start with things, the article mentioned this fabled 100-point team. As it came to constructing our team throughout the summer, signing players, all that type of good stuff, there were potential talks around how could a 100-point team look like in the future. I think Man City are the only club recently that have reached that 100-point barrier by winning the title in the 17-18 season. But to be fair with you, when they won the league that way, lots of the competition was very weak. A lot of teams had fallen off, and I guess it was a little bit easier to achieve that goal. But at the same time, I'm not going to knock the owners off for having these types of lofty, ambitious goals. But if you want to make that a reality, I'd say that Liverpool are the best recent example. In your first season, you want to cement your footballing philosophy, your style of play, and then in subsequent seasons, you build, expand, and grow upon that. Right now, we are still in the cementing phase, and until we have those foundations set in stone, we aren't ready at all to be discussing about becoming a 100-point team. That is just fantasy at this point in time. Now, what I do find really funny is that Christopher Vell is like a distant memory at this point in time. I don't know what this guy was doing during the time he was hired by us, but right now, this is the Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart show. But you have to remember that they have full control when it comes to deciding who gets sold, who gets bought. That's why they were hired specifically. But to start with things, we hear this from Paul Winstanley. As he says, we knew that there was going to be a big transition. There was no chance to sit back and relax, that's for sure. Did we think we would oversee a Premier League record of transactions? Probably not, but the average age of the squad was very high. We had players with contract issues which had been inherited from an ownership change, and there were players who made it clear that they wanted to leave. These things had to be addressed, and I think that's absolute facts. You know, some could argue that maybe some players felt a bit disillusioned, especially with how things became a bit of a shit show last season with very bloated squads. And you could argue, did we have to sign every single player we did in January? Could we not have waited until this summer? Who knows? But regardless, when you're in this situation, you have to get out of the mess that you make for yourself. And in the end, of course, I give these guys credit because they sold a lot of players, they brought in good money, and I think we came even closer to finalizing the squads. As Stewart says, the volume of players out, the volume of players in. The turnaround has been significant, but there were certain things that we had to achieve for the club and for the group this summer because results on the pitch at the end of last season made it clear it wasn't working. We had to make changes to put a club in a better position. We feel like we've done that, and I think we can all kind of agree upon the fact that there is really positive potential in the squads, and hopefully when things start to click a bit more on the fields, hopefully we see these investments now starting to shine. But at the same time, do we also make things a bit harder? And I'm going to use Disasi and Chalobah as an example, and I'm going to say this. It seemed like we priced Chalobah out of a move to Bayern Munich by demanding 50 mil. But how can you ask for 50 mil when you're stacked with centre-backs and buying clubs know that you must sell? In the end, we tried to force him to go to Nottingham Forest. The players said no, and he still remains here. And now we are stacked with an overbloated defence. And you could use the same examples for players like, Ian Maatson, even Conor Gallagher to a certain degree. And a part of me just thinks, like, could Disasi not have been bought in January once you sell Jalaba first, knowing the fact that we aren't opposed to making big signings in like any window, right? And it's these just little tiny concerns that kind of like present themselves to me, because it feels like you could have an avoidable situation. And again, the reality is that Pochettino does have a bloated squad at this point in time. And I say this because they've mentioned the difficulties behind having to sell, buy, transactions, etc., etc. But could they have made things a bit easier upon themselves if they just kind of balanced out and spread out the signings over multiple windows? Anyway, to move on, we understand why they decided to hire Pochettino. As Stewart says, it had to be the right fit in terms of the person, the leadership we needed, the ability and the track record of developing players and of building a team that can compete and perform in the Premier League. These were all the things we were looking for. It was a huge appointment for the club and everyone here at Cobham. We felt like Mauricio was the right fit, and we are even more impressed having spent these early months with him. The way he has gone about it day to day, he's had an impact with the players, staff, Lawrence and I, and the ownership, and I think that's absolutely fair. And I think these guys did the right thing by hiring Pochettino. It would have been very easy to get gassed by names like Nagelsmann and other bigger names like Enrique, but in the end, they've explained why they hired Pochettino for real, tangible footballing reasons. And we all know that Pochettino is very popular with the players. He is kind of like the dad figure at the football club. He's got the right energy. He knows how to communicate. He has experience because he was a top class player in his own right, and he's managed some massive teams throughout his career as well too. So he demands that respect, and he's one of those guys that also gives respect out as well too. So for me, I think these guys were spot on in hiring Pochettino, regardless of some of the things we're seeing on the football pitch. But again, only 4 games into the season, let's not get too carried away. And now let's discuss our transfer strategy this summer. And obviously throughout the summer transfer window, which closed September 1st, communication between Stewart, Winstanley and Pochettino was absolutely constant. There were countless convos that took place at Cobham during pre-season and during our tour as well too. And obviously with a new look men's squad, the average age, which is just a little over 22 years old, it is still a group that's built to compete under Pochettino this season, but also in the years ahead. Hence why we are buying young. And here's what Stewart said. He says that the ownership has supported us bringing in the players we have. The talent we have in the group is really exciting, and the dynamic day to day is really pleasing. That was one of our objectives, something we wanted to develop after last season. The combination of the players we brought in and the coaching staff is the one we're happy with. We have a lot of talent. Now we need to let that develop and grow. So he said it himself. It's about letting these guys grow and develop. And, at times, is every young player getting the opportunities to necessarily do that? Time will tell. The season has only started, and I don't want to start getting too carried away and getting too negative. I'm trying to stay a bit level-headed here, but I do hope that we see other players use a bit more aggressively. I do think that when you invest in youth, you also have to accept the consequences that can come. There are going to be times where the inexperience at times will cost us, but that's fine because you hired them for the players they can be in 3 years' time, right? Not for right now. So if someone like a Nico Jackson, for example, misses like 3 open goals, should that be enough to then decide, okay, let's sign another striker and let's put this guy on the bench right now? No, because that undermines the entirety of the project and what you're building. You have to bite the bullet. You have to accept what comes because these guys will become better for it. That's the reality of things. Still though, to move on, as Stewart says, with this group of players, the excitement is building. You can feel it daily. There will be setbacks. There always are. It can take time. New players, head coach, different philosophy, and many players not being able to complete a full pre-season for one reason. It won't happen overnight. That's normal, but we are excited for the short term, medium term, and long term, and what this group can look like with Mauricio leading it. So again, I like these affirmative words. I think this is exactly what I wanted to read. with my sporting directors. I think that, you could be cynical and think, why is it that today, like every media outlet and the club themselves are releasing like all these types of like articles from the owners and directors. But, I like that there's some transparency, at least have a more focused conversation, because a lot of times you need to feel that trust, right? And they've probably seen how the fan base can lose trust in the club very easily based on things that get communicated, but then actions not following what's communicated. So I do think that this is a positive step to at least trying to bridge any like type of concerns with the fan base, especially myself in particular, yeah? And the fact that I'm hearing that they understand short-term, medium, long-term gains, it does make me feel a bit better about things, to keep things real. Still though, we also learned what WINSTANLEY and Stewart are going to do now that the window has ended. And as it's been communicated, they will reflect and review the transfer business concluded this summer. Then they'll start planning for future windows. Of course, squad building is a never-ending process. It's a continuous craft. We will plan 2 transfer windows in advance. So this is just like clarity that we're getting from Paul WINSTANLEY. As he says, we can't be reactionary. We've got to look at the whole squads, the players that are out on loan, and opportunities we can give to players in the academy. That is the player puzzle we've got to pull together. So there's a lot of moving pieces here, and finding that balance and continuity, listen, it's not something that's simple. It's not something that's easy. And there are going to be mistakes that can come when you're moving this aggressively. But at least we're getting like an understanding that they accept that and they're still here to build and improve things. The fact that they're planning for 2 windows ahead, as you guys know, I've spoken about him already, but I'll say it again. Jamal Musiala is one of the key superstars the club are hoping they can sign in the following window. I've spoken about him, watch my previous vids, but this is no cap, this is no lies. And to be fair, he also complements this strategy of signing a superstar for the club, which we don't actually have. And I think Musiala, in my opinion, he is one of the 3 players at his age right now that actually is a serious contender for future Ballon d'Ors. Still though, I know the academy, of course, is... I think sometimes it's always just like club politics and good PR. The cynical part of me feels like, why do they even mention the academy? Like, is the academy even that popular across like the average fan? Not like the diehard fan or the core fans, but just the average fans, right? I'm not too sure. And to be fair, when so many of these guys could have been kicked out the door just to like earn a profit. I'm looking at Ian Maatsen in particular. That would have been a cold one because Poch wants to keep him. Pochettino has stressed that he's happy to work with these guys. Yet the club and the owners actually, who have control behind these things, they've been a bit more open to selling if the opportunity presents itself. So I do feel like, again, I have to see more behind that. In my opinion, am I seeing any young players currently that are like good enough to break into the first team in the next year or 2? Probably not. I think the under-18s though have some very interesting and exciting talents, and I think under those age groups too, we have some youth that's cooking up behind the scenes. So I think that, and maybe the next like 3 to 5 years, we'll start to see some interesting things happening with our academy. I guess the only thing they really mentioned about Cobham was discussing Reece James getting the captaincy and obviously the relevancy behind that, how Pochettino really supported James getting the captaincy, and of course praising Levi Colwill. But I think that's kind of easy to do that, and I feel like everyone else has been seen as pretty expendable, considering that, can you say they're way worse than other players that have been brought in? I'm going to let you guys decide upon that, yeah, but you probably know my opinion. To give the final quote about Cobham, we're steeped in history with the players that have come through and had success, so it's a major part of our thought process. When squad planning, we always work with Neil Bath, Jim Fraser and other academy staff to identify which pathways we need for the players coming through. So again, I think that this is like the long-term plan right now. We'll see who comes through. But to move on, it was nice that they acknowledged the women's team, which they'd have to do because the women's team is one of the most successful parts of this football club. As they said, our manager in Emma Hayes has done an incredible job and created a very strong culture. We are keen to soak as much of that up as we can. We want to give broader resources to the women's team and learn from the success Emma has had. And I think that's just the right thing to do. And I think that whenever you have success in any department for anything, you have to respect, understand that, and understand what makes it work. And the fact that we've supported the women's team by signing some top women players throughout this summer window supports the fact that we want to maintain having one of the best women's team across European football. So, my friends, I think it's been a very insightful day of news surrounding our football club. It's a bit of a long video, but I just kind of feel like with all this news to digest, naturally the video is going to be quite long. Before I wrap things up though, this 3 things Pochettino video has to fix. It's one of the most annoying videos I made recently. It should have been out yesterday. It should have been out today, but hopefully it'll be ready tomorrow morning at least. I'll give you guys some insight. Yesterday and today, I've been having appointments. You guys know about my back from a few months ago. I've been getting some scans for that, appointments for that. Yeah, there's some complications happening behind the scenes, and I had to go into London today, and it kind of just killed my time a little bit. But tomorrow, hopefully I'll have the fixes video out, and I'm going to have the predicted lineup video early tomorrow too. So my friends, I hope you guys enjoyed. Share your thoughts and opinions. And on that note, I'm Nini FC. This is Blue Lions TV. I'll catch you guys later with some more videos. Cool.